Have you ever been to a drive-in, tuned your car radio to that weird station, and just wondered, how does this even work? How does the movie's sound get perfectly beamed into my car? Well, it's not magic, but it's close. It's a tiny, personal radio station. And in this explainer, we're going to show you exactly how it works. I mean, it is such a classic experience, right? You're parked under the stars, watching a film on that giant screen. But, the real technical wizardry isn't just the projector. It's that invisible radio signal that magically turns your car into a private sound booth. So how does the epic, booming soundtrack of a blockbuster get from that little projection booth all the way over directly into your car? Let's break it down. The secret is honestly beautifully simple. For those 2 hours, your car becomes the exclusive audience for one of the smallest, most hyperlocal radio stations on the entire planet. The drive-in is broadcasting its very own low-power FM signal created just for you. So let's start with a bird's-eye view of how this whole personal broadcast bubble works. You might be surprised how simple it really is. It all just comes down to a few key pieces of hardware working together in perfect harmony. So here it is. This is the entire setup in one simple diagram. You've got the projector booth, that's basically mission control. You've got an antenna, that's the voice. And then you have the parking lot full of cars, that's your audience. These 3 things, that's really all you need. The audio's journey is a really simple 4-step path. First, the sound leaves the projector. Second, it gets fed into an FM transmitter. Third, a special coaxial cable carries that signal up to an antenna. And finally, the antenna broadcasts it across the whole lot for your car radio to pick up. That's it. Okay, now that we know the signal path, let's look at the actual gear you need to create this little mini radio station. The essential hardware that forms the real heart of the system. And it really boils down to 2 key components. First, you've got the FM transmitter. You should think of this as the brains of the whole operation. It takes the audio signal and encodes it onto one specific FM frequency. Then you've got the antenna. If the transmitter's the brains, this is the voice. It takes that signal and actually sends it out into the air. So your full toolkit is actually pretty straightforward. You need the FM transmitter and an antenna. Usually a simple dipole or ground plane type will do. But, and this is really important, just as crucial are the supporting players. You need a specific 50-ohm coaxial cable to connect them without losing signal, and a stable, reliable 15-volt power supply. Trust me, using the wrong cable or a cheap power source will cause you all sorts of headaches. But it's not just about having the right gear, it's about how you put it all together. Setting up a broadcast involves some practical science to avoid some really common pitfalls. One of the biggest technical terms you're going to hear is SWR, or standing wave ratio. But the easiest way to think about it is like a garden hose. When there are no kinks, water flows out nice and smooth. But if you kink the hose, pressure builds up and a bunch of water reflects back, right? Well, SWR measures how much of your radio signal is getting kinked and reflecting back towards your transmitter, instead of being broadcast out. You always want a low SWR. The goal is really simple. You want basically all the power sent from the transmitter to be broadcast out by the antenna. A high SWR means power is just bouncing back where it came from, which is super inefficient and can actually damage your transmitter. So what does a bad setup actually sound like to the audience? Well, you get those dead spots in the parking lot where the signal just disappears. The fix is often simple. Move the antenna higher. If the signal is weak or fades in and out, that's probably due to the signal literally bouncing off all the metal cars and objects. The solution? Move the antenna away from metal. And if all else fails, just switching the broadcast from stereo to mono can often clear up distortion like magic. Okay, so you've got a clean signal broadcasting across the whole lot. Great. But now you face a completely different challenge. Hollywood movie audio is not designed for your car radio. You have to learn how to master the mix. This quote just nails the problem perfectly. We've all been there, right? Movie audio has a massive dynamic range. Explosions are designed to be absolutely deafening, and whispers are meant to be barely audible. But an FM radio signal has a much, much smaller window of what it can actually handle. The solution is this cool thing called audio compression. The best way to think of it is like putting a ceiling and a floor on the sound. It squashes those super loud explosions down so they don't distort, and it boosts the quiet whispers up so they don't get lost. This whole process fits the entire movie soundtrack into the tiny dynamic range of an FM broadcast. And this is actually what it looks like in the transmitter's menu. You can set a compression ratio, like 8:1 or even 16:1, to tame those really loud peaks. And then you can use a feature called expansion to specifically boost the quiet parts, making all the dialogue crystal clear. No more reaching for the volume knob during an action scene. So, getting a signal out there is one thing, but making it a great experience for everybody, well, that requires some attention to detail. So let's cover some pro tips that separate a decent setup from a truly flawless one. Here are 5 quick tips straight from the pros. 1. Always set up in daylight hours before the show so you have time to troubleshoot. 2. Use sturdy XLR cables for your audio. They're built to last. 3. Take a second to set the RDS so your station name actually shows up on people's car stereos. 4, and this is a big one, physically walk the entire parking lot with a little handheld radio to find and fix any dead spots before your customers do. And last, only use as much power as you need to cover the lot. More isn't always better. And here is maybe the most important pro tip of them all. Look, technology is great, but it can fail, and it usually fails at the worst possible moment. No matter how reliable your gear is, you need a plan B. Having a small, inexpensive 1-watt backup transmitter just sitting there, ready to go, can be an absolute lifesaver. If your main unit fails for any reason, a power surge, a spilled coffee, anything, you can swap in the backup in minutes. It's a tiny investment that ensures one small technical glitch doesn't ruin the night for hundreds of customers. The show will go on. So the next time you find yourself at a drive-in, settling in to watch a movie, you'll know the secret. You're not just watching a film. You're tuned in to a tiny private radio station. And now you can listen for the details. Is the dialogue clear? Do the explosions distort? Is it in stereo or mono? You'll be hearing the hidden work of a broadcast engineer in action.